Welcome to Raising Eight, the podcast that proves a full house is more than just a TV show. Meet the dad who's raised 8 kids and 2 grandkids under one roof and has the scars and dad jokes to show for it. Grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and let's talk family, big family.
Hello, listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. And this is episode 2 of Raising Eight. I hope you listened to the first one, and I'm going to try to ramp this up to 2 podcasts a week because in my mind, it's kind of dragging out, and I don't want it to do that. I know you're not sitting on the edge of your seat waiting for the podcast to come out, which I hope you are, but that probably isn't the case. So if I can ramp these up and get them out a little bit quicker, I think we'll get to the meat of the fathering portion of this. So in my first episode, I told you about my 3 children and a short marriage of 5 years with my ex-wife. And I want to, a couple things I want to do because I'm getting into another relationship after this relationship is over. And I want to stay away from the relationship piece of this. If I ever do a podcast on relationships, I'll let you know. It probably will never happen. It might be what you can do to be in a good relationship, but it wouldn't be about my specific relationships because, frankly, it's none of anyone's business, and wouldn't want to say something derogatory towards my ex-wives because I was there too, and of course, I'm going to tell you my side of the story, and there's always 2 sides. So we left with my wife and I getting a divorce, and here I am now, a single father, in that I'm having to visit my children, right? Which was very difficult for me. I didn't like that fact that I had to now have visitation, and I had a lot of visitation. The custody battle was ugly, and it shouldn't have been. We should have been smarter humans or parents, primarily for the reason that the kids had to live through that, and it wasn't fair for us to do that to them. And I was selfish and they were selfish, and doesn't matter. So now I'm in this situation where I'm, getting my kids. I had a lot of visitation because I fought very hard for that. And when I did have my children, I did my best to spend as much time with them, taking them to my mom's or taking them to the park or just spending as much time as I could with the kids and trying to be a good father. Again, I don't even really know what that means at this point. I have 3 children, 5 years and under, and I'm just doing my best to change diapers and do all those things when I have the kids. So I get into another relationship not long after that relationship ended, year and a half, and again, didn't manage those expectations. She'll probably agree with this. We didn't sit down and talk about how this was, and the difference in this relationship, and it's kudos to my new wife because she was younger and she hadn't been through this. She had 0 kids, and we had a child almost right away when we got married, just like the first time. So you see these patterns. I'm developing this pattern again, and now I was paying so much child support that I had to get a new job. It was just unbearable how much child support I was paying. With that new job, we moved to Glendale, California, Los Angeles area. So here she has to move to Glendale and relatively kind of by herself because now I'm in an office in Los Angeles most of the time, or I'm on the road. I traveled the 11 Western states, and it got to the point where I was going out of town every other week for a while, but that was a little bit further down the road. I was primarily in Las Vegas, Arizona, and Southern California, but nevertheless, I was gone, and she was here by herself, alone with a child, trying to learn how to be a mom. She didn't know. Her mom was no longer with us, so she had to rely on friends or my mom or whoever, my sister, whoever she was talking to. So, looking back, if we had to put this on paper and kind of plan out how it was going, this would not have been the plan, by the way. But here, I'm stubborn, I'm focused, I'm driven, I'm going to make more money so we can live more comfortably and this and that. Not long after that, we have another child. So this is 2 more girls in my life. So I have the 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. And now I have 2 a 1 year old and a baby just a few years after all this started going on. And as a dad, I'm trying to, I'm not sad, by the way, about the first marriage. I'm angry, right? I'm saying things I shouldn't be saying around the kids, and I'm saying things to her. The exchanges were terrible. We were almost at a point where we had to do supervised changes. Uh, my first wife's bad mouthing my new wife. My new wife's a little bit confused, I would imagine. And but she's holding her own. I mean, she's probably bad mouthing her too. I don't know. I'm not. That's not what the podcast is about. It's about me as a father going, okay, how do I manage all this stuff that's going on? Again, very much in love with my children. I want to be with them as much as I can, but I'm having to go back and forth with them to their moms. And they're getting different information at their mom's house than I'm giving them at my house, right? Typical divorce. This is why we go back to the beginning of my first podcast and talk about, discussing those expectations and getting all this stuff worked out. And, I've said before in the past that I probably wish I wouldn't have got married twice before my current wife, and we'll get down to that down the road. But the reality is I wouldn't have these six beautiful children either. I wouldn't have my five daughters and my son, and they wouldn't have their kids either. And they have bigger families than when we started. So now we're in Los Angeles. I'm going back and forth driving. I was driving 2,000 miles a month to see my kids, back and forth, up to five, 3 weekends a month, every Wednesday. 10 weeks in the summer and all this. And again, apologies to my current wife. When I'm not there, she's taking care of five kids now, or four kids, depending on what time it was. And like I said, she's young. She doesn't really know what to do. She gets along with everybody, but it's a lot of work. And I have more empathy for her now. I just thought back then, well, you just got to do what you got to do. Well, that's great to say, but the reality is she was, like I said, alone in Los Angeles, not doing the best she can, and she did fine. Kids fed, they're safe, everybody's doing good. Finally, I go to my boss and say, look, I'm traveling anyway. What does it matter what airport I fly out of? So I talk him into us coming back to San Diego. So now we have more friends here. We have more family. We have all those things going on. And I would say it's probably a little bit easier for my wife, but she's still having to deal with a lot of stress, right? And like I said, she's young. She's putting all these things together. She's doing fine. It's just the fact is, um, it's just a lot of work. And here I get to leave, on a Monday morning at 3 in the morning, and I don't come back till Wednesday, Thursday, Friday sometimes. And she's having to manage all these things that are going on. So, um, really, in the whole scheme of things, it was much harder on her, I'm sure, than it was on me. But from a dad's point of view, this is what I had to do to be successful, to make as much money as I could, so everybody had what they needed. And we've moved a couple times once we were in San Diego or once we were in Poway. And I don't know, it was a lot. It was a lot going on. And I said something in my last podcast about babies and dads. Um, I I can have a grandchild and hold that grandchild for about 2 minutes until that kid starts screaming. I think they think I'm a giant. So um, moms have a much better way of nurturing when with babies like that. Once they hit 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, man, I'm all on board, right? I'm getting along with them. We can have fun. We can play. I remember one time when my son was about, I don't know, he was probably 3 years old. My friend was over at the house and we were playing around with them, and he had a sword in his hand, a toy sword. And I leaned back and kind of pretended like I fell down, and he hit me right in the biscuits with this sword. And he said, I killed the monster. I killed the monster. And I thought my friend was going to hawk up along. It was so funny. And these are those little things. We were living in Penasquitos at one time, and we had all the kids around. We were getting ready to go out on some adventure. I don't know. I think we had 5 kids at the time. I don't think my youngest was born yet. And we were all sitting around. We were kind of having a snack and a drink before we went out. And my son left the room, and I'm like, I wasn't really paying attention. But then all of a sudden, I went, where did he go? So I get up and I start walking towards the restroom, and he comes out of the restroom. I said, "Dude, are you okay? Yeah, everything okay?" He says, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what was going on in there?" And he reaches into this bag of chips and he says, "Well, when I was in there, the toilet got clogged up." And I said, "Well, why don't you tell me? I'll go fix it." And as I start walking, he says, "No, no, no, I took care of it. I took care of it." I said, "How did you take care of it?" He goes, "Well, I just put my arm down there and pulled everything out and then flushed it and it went down fine." And at this time, he's got his hand in a bag of chips. And everybody's like, "Oh my God." So, needless to say, he got to eat that whole bag of chips himself. I think he washed his hand. Well, it didn't kill him. So, these are these little things with kids. It's like checking to see if a kid's got a dirty diaper. This will humble any man in the world, by the way. I don't care the most macho man in the world. You reach into a kid's diaper and find out that they do not have a clean diaper, it'll wake you up immediately, and all that toughness goes away real quick. But so here I have, at the time I had four daughters and a son, and we would have campouts and we would build forts and things like that. So I was getting very close to my kids, and but my biggest regret, I guess, is that they had to live through a divorce, and kids should never have to live through that pain. They Kids are resilient, but they're much better off without having to live through that. What they need to have is two nurturing parents. So this going out to those dads that aren't dads yet, put that work in up front, right? Put that relationship work in up front before you decide you're going to have kids. And I think I think the best thing is a traditional situation where you courtship and then you get married and you have kids, but that's your business. It's not my business. I just think historically and from my um, view, that is a much better way, and it takes a lot of pressure off of the parents if they're nurturing their relationship or not. So we're going, like I said, we have in 1996, my youngest child was born. So now I have five daughters and a son, and I should back up for a second and tell you that I was married for 5 years the first time, and it wasn't 5 years of hell. It was 5 years of growing and learning and growing up and maturing and a lot of those things. And we had a lot of fun at different times. And we had these beautiful children, and there was in-laws around, and my mom was alive at the time and around. And um, it wasn't 5 years of hell. It was just maybe 6 months. I don't know, or whatever the time it took for the relationship to go south. It wasn't about this horrible thing. And now my second marriage, the marriage I'm talking about today, only lasted 7 years. But it wasn't 7 years of hell. We had a great time. We did a lot of things with the kids. We went on trips. We used to drive up to Sacramento and see my sister. Um, we had a lot of different adventures and we spent a lot of time with the kids. Except for me traveling, which was definitely a burden, mostly on my wife. Excuse me. We had the kids a lot. And of course, when we didn't have my older three kids, so we called them the older kids. Anytime we're having a conversation, we say, "Oh, those are the older kids, and then the other kids." And it wasn't bad. I love being a father. I still love being a father. I wish I was a father more now than because my kids are grown and I don't get to see them as much as I'd like to, or communicate with as much as I would like to communicate with them. I just felt I just felt like a protector. I felt like um, I was giving love and I was getting a lot of love back. So that was just the greatest thing about being a father. And I'm telling you, I would not trade it for the world. Not, and I know I had some bad right before this podcast came on, I looked up the divorce rate in America, and it's still like 43%, which is funny to me at some level. Like we can't get that straightened out. We can't figure out how to make stronger relationships, and it has nothing to do with society. It has nothing to do with anything else. It has to do with, in my opinion, people being impatient, thinking that there's this fairyland thing that's going to happen when people get married. And women may still I don't know what women think. And I'm in I'm in I'm injecting to you what I think my wife was going through at the time when she had to deal with all this shit. And she'd have to tell you that. I don't know. Or a woman would have to tell you that. All I know is I was the king of the castle and I was going to go make the money and I was going to do these things. And, you do the women work. And I'm kidding about that. I'm being facetious. I changed as many diapers as women changed. I did fed kids, cooked dinner, did all those things, took them to school, helped them with homework, did all those things that when time allowing, I did all those things. So I did not get them to school every day. My wife was getting them to school. This is the second set of kids. And, like I said, we had a lot of fun together. The kids would go to bed early. We'd play darts. We'd do a lot of other things. And I got to tell you one thing. She used to always want to go out when I came home from traveling. Well, I didn't want to go anywhere. I've been eating. This is the most horrible sentence in the world. I've been out at these 4-star, 5-star restaurants eating with clients, and I get home and I'm so sick of that food. But she wanted to go out, and I didn't. I should have taken her out more. I should have just did it, and I didn't do it. So she had to put up with that too. So look at. I want to keep this podcast about fatherhood. And right before I came upstairs, I told my wife, this is going to be the hardest podcast to do because this is not bashing anybody. And um, I don't want my wife to see this, my ex-wife to see this and go, oh my God, that's not true. That's not what happened. Listen, she was right in a lot of ways. I was gone. I was out doing those things I thought a father was supposed to do or a husband was supposed to do. But there was no, and she probably agrees with, yes, you had to do it, but it wasn't easy on her. And I appreciate what she did for my older kids and for the kids that we had together. And like I said, we had 1992, 1993, and then we had a child in 1996 who was born in Poway, and my second daughter from that marriage was born in Poway as well. So, like I said, we had a lot more family and friends around. Um, I was still in the rooms when my kids were born. I got to tell you that when my oldest one of that group was born, no, we were in Glendale Adventist Hospital, and I did something really shitty. And in my mind, I thought it was the right thing to do, right? You always do the right thing to do in that situation. But this is my poor wife. We're in this hospital. She has a baby about 4 in the morning. Next to her, she was sharing a room with this other woman. And there was about 5 gang members in here. And you could just tell by the way they were talking and stuff. These weren't people we were used to being around. And after she had the baby, I said, you know what? Just my advice from what I understood from the other 3 kids we had, let the nurse take the baby and get as much rest as you can. Because when you get home, there's no one to help you. There's no rest. And I'm going to be here as much as I can. But again, I'm traveling. I'm going out of town. I'm doing things. And so she did that. She took my advice and I'm pretty sure she did. I'm sure she'll text me if I'm wrong. And I left. I left the hospital. I went home and took a shower, and I went to a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning at the office with the manufacturer. And when I tell people that, like, oh man, what are we out of your mind? You should have stayed with your wife. But the thing is, there's nothing I could do for her there, and probably could have protected her from the gang members, but I don't think anything was going to happen, and nothing did happen. But it's kind of a looking back thing. People would say, especially women, would say to me, "Why would you leave her like that?" Well, in my mind, she was going to rest and I could go and take care of something that I had an opportunity to do that didn't come along very often. So I had to get to that meeting. So I know you guys are probably throwing tomatoes at your iPhone right now saying, I can't believe you did that, Ed. But again, you got to understand who I was back then. I'm this hard, hard driver kind of guy. Want to move up I wore a suit every day, slicked my hair back, had a tie on it every day. I was this mover and shaker. Had to learn a lot about that stuff later in life, but this is kind of who I thought I wanted to be. And I felt like in order to get ahead, I had to be this guy that just was a driver, right? It was just was going to push through anything and make sure that my wife and kids were taken care of. And that was always just my intention. So don't think I did it because I'm selfish. I did it because it was what's in the best interest of my family. And the more money I could make, the better off they would be. So ultimately, like I said, we after about a year we moved back to San Diego, and things kind of smoothed out there. Now, as far as a father's perspective, I'm just that protector at this point, right? The kids are little, most of them are girls. I don't know how necessarily to relate to girls like that, although they're like daddy's girl kind of, yeah, that's all great and, flowery and all that stuff. But I'm still trying just to be in control so everybody has a place to live, things to eat, and all that good stuff. So, um, for you young men out there that haven't had kids yet or are having kids, and you're in a career, consider your career uh, when fathering. Okay. Listen, I know a lot of guys that have traveled in their life and everything was fine, and my life was fine. Everything was fine too. It's just looking back, it probably I put a lot of burden on my second wife because I was gone a lot and I was trying to just be that superhero out in the work world, and I was doing fantastic, by the way. I was selling the crap out of stuff, and I was really moving up, and things were going well, even at the point where they sold the company. And the new company rehired me back at a higher wage, even why I lived in San Diego. So that kind of worked out too. So ultimately, this marriage ends after 7 years, and no one needs to know details. But now, and this will be the third episode, now the kids come live with me, the three girls. Doesn't matter what the circumstances were, but they come to live with me. And now I'm this single dad with six kids. Um, right after that happened, right after we decided we weren't going to be married anymore, I lose my job. So now I have six kids and no job. And I'm living in Poway, where I grew up, in my mom's house, and I'm paying rent and I'm doing all those things. And this is where a lot of stuff starts turning, um, in a good way. A lot of stuff starts turning in a good way. Again, we have this situation with my current wife that I'm divorcing, that we're getting divorced. And here goes the stress from the divorce again on these three kids, these new three kids. And it's affecting the older kids too, because they had a relationship with my wife. And so now I backed myself into this situation, and neither, it doesn't matter who was at fault. We are all at fault. All the parents, all the adults in this thing, we're acting like fools. And the kids are getting the brunt of it, right? And and this is where, when I talk about getting your relationship squared away so you don't have to put kids through this, I'm begging you not to put kids through a divorce. If you can't get that relationship squared away before, don't put your kids through a divorce. It was hard on my ex-wives, it was hard on my kids, it was hard on me. Now, my attitude, my parenting skills are changing. I'm in a new job. Well, didn't have a job, but I'm leaving a job that I had for quite a while. I'm back in Poway, of course, and now I'm having to. There's nothing romantic about being a single parent when you're under all this stress, if that makes any sense. It's not like you go to people and go, "Oh yeah, I'm a single parent and I'm the coolest guy in the world." It's not like that. And it wasn't for them either. They, here both my ex-wives now have three children. And they're not with the father, and it's not the way it should be. Again, thank God for those two wives, because I have these six beautiful children, five daughters and a son at this point. And I'm having to manage three kids from afar and then three kids up close, and then they're going to their moms and experiencing different things and different relationships and things like that. So, um, it, you know, this is this turmoil you can develop for yourself that I developed because I didn't have a user's manual for the kids or a user's manual for marriage. And I didn't really have a person that I could talk to about marriage. My parents were not successfully married. I didn't have anybody really around me that, had this great marriage that I can even think of now. So, like I said, it was one of these things. And a lot of the parents that I know at school now, they're starting to have some issues because, it's not that kids add a lot of stress. It's just that you don't think it's going to be what it is. So, if you're a guy, let's for instance, and you say, I golf every Saturday, okay, and your wife says, well, when we get married, you can't golf every Saturday, and they're like, well, I'm still going to golf every Saturday because that's what I've been doing for a long time, and that's the way it is. Um, and I'm not saying that you should cower to your wife or your wife should cower to you, but I got news for you. You're not going to golf every Saturday because stuff comes up. You'll get ready to go places. Kids will get sick. Things will happen. Kids will have some medical issues. I don't think I told you this. When my son was about 2 years old, he had a medical condition we had to get with his eyes. The other thing, and he had to have surgery when he was 2 years old. I think I did mention it, but one of the things he used to do, try this, moms, out for size. He used to throw these tantrums where he would start crying, and he would cry so much he would stop breathing. And my wife would pick him up, or I'd pick him up, and he would turn blue and pass out right in your arms. Well, you think this surprises a new mom a little bit. It does. So we take him to the doctor. The doctor says, yeah, that's not that unusual. I'm like, I think it's unusual there, doctor. I've never seen that before. And he says, yeah, well, he'll wake up. Well, to me, I'm going, okay, well, that's logical. He'll take a breath or whatever. It's not logical to my wife. So she's freaking out every time this happens, right? As she should. So imagine that you're holding your baby and they're crying so hard that they stop breathing and just go limp in your arms and turn blue. And then 2 seconds later, boom, they wake up and they catch their breath. But that freaks you out, right? As you can imagine. And yeah, I mean, that's nuts. And I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just these are those things that are going to happen in your life when you think you got all these plans and you find out that your child is not feeling well, and you're like, well, there goes that plan. Because I hope that the one thing I can get through to every one of you parents, whether you're a mother or father, is that you need to do what's in the best interest of your kids. Always. It's kind of like when you say that in the company. I always do what's in the best interest of the company. Well, you need to do what's in the best. If your kids don't feel good, then you don't go anywhere. You stay home and take care of that child. And I know that 99.9% of you do that. I understand that. I got a good one when back when my kids were being born, they had sonograms, but they weren't very clear. They were like 2-dimensional or whatever. They have like 4-dimensional ones now. You can see what the kid's going to look like in their face. But when my second marriage, my second daughter was supposed to be a boy, and they kept telling us it's going to be a boy. I'm like, thank God I get another boy because I only have one boy out of 3 girls so far. And I'm sitting there at Pomerado Hospital in Poway, and this child comes out, and I looked at the doctor and said, I didn't go to school for 8 years, but that's not a boy. And he giggled, right, laughed. All the nurses started laughing, and they said, yeah, well, we did the best we can back then to guess, and they guessed wrong. So didn't matter to me really in the whole scheme of things. But it was just funny when my grandkids are born now, we get these 4D um, sonograms, and you can, oh my God, they're amazing how clear they are. So anyway, that's episode 2. So I at this point have 6 children. I have 5 daughters, a son. They're all about ready to start going to school. Well, we have the older ones are in school already, but they're going to a school down in San Diego. I'm having to manage that relationship with the school people because God only knows what she told them about me. So when you go into the school, you're kind of that leper, right? Where they look at you, and then God forbid I bring my wife to school, the current wife, and they're looking at her like she's because God only knows what she said about her. So now we're walking in and people are looking at us, you know, you know, whatever, uh, whispering about who we are. And of course, once they get to know us, they know we're all just normal people. It's not that unusual a thing. You understand that I have my own feelings about her. She has her feelings about me, whatever. But again, no regrets. Um, could have been better at relationships. All of us, all three of us, my two exes and me. But we weren't, and we're way farther ahead. We're all grandparents now, and we can sit in a room and be civil and all that. So, um, the next episode 3, I'll get episode 3 out this week. Episode 3 is an interesting episode. I want you to make sure you watch that. It's going to tie all these 6 kids together, and I'll be talking about a relationship, but a very different type of relationship for a lot of different reasons. Not because anybody's either better or worse. It's just that we took more time. So I'll talk about that. So thank you very much for listening to episode 2. Guys, if you're out there, if you want to ask any questions, if you see this and you have a young man maybe that's interested in is a new father or he's going to be a new father, he can always hit me up. You can ask me questions. I'd be happy to answer them on the podcast. My answers will be my opinion. I'm not an expert. There is no such thing as an expert. So, and then I'm going to try to get a mom or two on here, or maybe a teacher, because I want to see other people's perceptions of fathers too. So I appreciate you coming in here, and like I said, share this as much as you can. You can get a hold of me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com or any of my social media platforms. So stay tuned. I'll start doing 2 of these a week so we can kind of get it up. And remember, all this podcast is about is what my perception as a father was as things were going on. I hope it has no negative reflection on their moms. That's not my intention at all. I hope it has no reflection on the kids. It's not my intention, of course, at all. It's just kind of what I've learned, the knowledge I've gained, and I'll give you a little teaser for the next couple of podcasts. What you think is going to happen right now is not going to happen. What I thought was the right thing was not the right thing all the time. There's 100 things I could have done different that would have made the situation better, but I didn't, and I can't change it now. I was emotional. I was young. I was overzealous. I was a driver. I was all these things that I have much more control over my feelings now. So again, edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. Get ready for episode 3. I'll chop this up a little bit and put it out there so you can see some bits and pieces. And I will see all of you on episode 3 or another podcast if it comes out before that. Thank you very much. Have a great day.